One of the best ways to grow your worm population in your worm farm is to have breeder bins that are designated for making cocoons versus just worm castings. You can have some grow out bins that are made for just eating food scraps and making castings, and that's exactly what I use these vermi huts for, but I have breeder bins set aside to make these cocoons. So each cocoon contains about 3 baby worms on average. Sometimes it's 1, 2, but it can go all the way up to 7. But I would say on average 3, and it's pretty amazing how fast your population can grow by using breeder bins versus just something like a vermi hut or a regular grow out bin. So these are my nursery bins. After the breeders make a ton of cocoons, I like to throw them in here so they can hatch and grow up. The bedding consists of pre-compost that I make and also the overs bedding from breeder bins. So I sift out all the cocoons and anything that's not broken down. I like to just throw back in here because once the baby worms start to hatch, they'll start chowing away at this bedding and turn into castings. I also like to add a tiny bit of worm chow just for those baby worms that are starting to hatch and they're looking for something to eat. The cocoons itself obviously don't eat quite yet, and some people don't even feed their nursery bins at all. They just let their worms start eating the bedding and that's it. They'll eventually turn into juveniles and they'll grow up, turn into adults, and eventually become breeders themselves, or you can put them in a grow out bin. A lot of grow out bins are mixed ages, adults, juveniles, and babies, and that's fine, but sometimes it's nice to keep them separate so they're not all competing. These baby worms will get their own place to grow up instead of competing with the adults for the food that's available. This nursery bin setup, I actually really like it. I poke some holes in the top so airflow can get in, but I like to put a damp piece of newspaper down, some bubble wrap in to keep moisture in, but also keep airflow in. There's a balance to it, and this has worked really well for me. Here are a couple little baby worms that have hatched, and they're hanging out here on this newspaper. You can see how tiny they are. When they very first hatch, they're called wisps, and they're really tiny, white, skinny. They look like string almost, and then they'll start turning pink, and then they'll start growing up and looking like regular worms. And then I think it takes about 8 weeks for them to officially be an adult worm, and they can either be put in a breeder bin or just be in your regular grow out bins. So you can see in this bin, a lot of this bedding is turning into castings. They love being in this, but all this cardboard that's not eaten, this is all food for them. Here are a few baby worms. It's a little blurry because I zoomed in, but you can see these worms have hatched. Some of them have grown up, and then usually over time, I'll pick out the ones that are growing up. But like here's a bigger one. It's still a juvenile, but they can still plow through food and make tons of castings for you. They just can't breed yet and make cocoons yet. So I'm going to show one more of these nursery bins and resetting. I have 6 of them so far, but here's another one just to show what I'm doing. I just make a little trench and I put these cocoons in here. Cocoons hatch when they hatch. Sometimes they'll hatch after a day, sometimes after 3 weeks, sometimes after months and months. And so I just like to keep them in the right conditions, which they like to be warm. They like their bedding to be moist. And so far, like a lot of them have been really successful with hatching. I've had tons of baby worms hatching, putting them in my grow out bins and breeder bins, and it just starts the cycle all over again. So I'm putting a lot of this bedding in here with the cocoons. A lot of this bedding is left over from what the breeders did not turn into castings. And so it's perfect inoculated bedding for these baby worms to start eating it down and turn it into castings while growing up and hatching, if that makes sense. So again, I do like to put a little bit of worm chow, not too much, and I definitely don't put more until I see it's all the way gone. You don't want to overfeed your bin and for it to get anaerobic, but this is how I run my nursery bins. It's worked well for me, and the worms seem really happy. The moisture level stays really good, but here's another little worm. You see they're tiny. You can see them, but they'll definitely get way bigger once they become adults. So I'm going to put this newspaper back on. They love, they'll eventually eat through this newspaper as well. It's just damp. Put it over this kind of like a blanket. Once they eat through it, I'll just replace it with another damp piece of newspaper. I also like to put the bubble wrap, and remember to put it bubble side down so it doesn't suffocate them. I poke some holes all along the top of this bin, so I'm able to put a lid on because the airflow can still get in through those holes. I'm going to start posting a lot more about these cocoons, sorting them and how they're hatching, updates and everything. If you have questions or suggestions on what you do in your worm farm, I'm all about it. Leave them down below in the comments.